Blade stands before a burning church. He doesn't know where he is. No, he does know. He's in a nightmare. It's cold. He's cold and he's burning all at the same time. I'm dreaming, he says. None of this is real. Then, as if to make it true, he repeats it. None of this is real. Because in reality, Blade sits inside of a roadside diner. A voice seems to snap him out of his reverie. An armored man sits across from him, worried about Blade. He came. They all came. Because Blade asked them to. He's the one who taught them all how to kill vampires. So when he calls, they show up. He said it was something important. Surrounding the two men, spread out throughout the diner, are about a dozen armored men wielding weapons. It is important, Blade replies. Then he stands and draws his swords. The armored man watches this carefully. Is something here? Blade stares down at him. Something is here. Then he slaughters them all. Left standing in the wake of all this carnage, Blade repeats to himself, something is here. Tears roll down his cheeks. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown's coverage of Blood Hunt, Episode 7, Midnight Suns. We then bounce to Arizona, where we find a woman named Tulip visiting Danny Ketch. Tulip is an ally of Blade, most recently featured in his own ongoing series. After the events of the opening of this comic, Tulip is worried about Blade. He wouldn't hunt and kill his own men, but after taking on more vampiric power from Dracula, who knows what he can do? Danny puts together the pieces of this story easily enough. You think he's being controlled? Or someone's forcing him to do this? Tulip answers honestly. She doesn't know. She wants to find Blade and ask him, but she can't do it alone. The Ghost Rider's pen and stare isn't that easy to deal with, Danny says. And even if he is cool with it as the host, the writer might not be. He is going to test her. Tulip finishes her beer and then offers herself up for the testing. The Ghost Rider manifests, burning away through Danny Ketch's flesh. It looks into Tulip's eyes, into her soul, and she screams. When she wakes up, Tulip is in bed. Johnny Blaze hands her some tea, and we get a brief nod to his recent status as a Ghost Rider. Right now, he isn't one. The spirit of vengeance was taken from him, and you can go read Ghost Rider Final Vengeance if you want to know more about that. Right now, all John can do is shoot hellfire from a shotgun and be a real mean Subanovich. The two people size up their traumas, and I think they're going to get along just fine. The writer will help her find Blade. As for what happens after they find him, well, that's kind of going to be up to Blade, isn't it? If he wants a fight, can Tulip handle that? She says that she can. Blade asked her to put him down if he ever got too dark. Tulip means to keep her word. She then goes outside, and we get a bit of a bonding moment with Danny. She asks if he is going to help her, and he says yes, but Danny and John were in the middle of a thing. If Tulip wants them to help her, then she's going to have to help them first. He then unlocks a bunker built into the Arizona desert, revealing an incredibly well-stocked weapons cache. Take your pick. The three of them then ambush a vampire convoy, transporting things from the Dark Force dimension, hoping to make some money selling them as weapons. They kill the vampires, but then a tentacle monster bursts from the truck and attacks Tulip. Johnny shoots her free of the tentacle, and then they run, because the Ghost Rider plows into the beast, obliterating it in a burst of hellfire. We then end the issue in Iraq, where Victoria Montesi has been brought to a cave. She warns the surrounding people to get any children away from this place. She goes inside. In the cave, she finds an old man swathed in shadows and darkness. Even his speech seems tainted by it. This guy has been possessed, and Victoria has come to help these folks. After some taunting by the demon about how he's totally evil and there's no way she can handle him, Victoria cuts her hand and uses her blood to create a summoning circle. From it rises a woman. She points at the possessed man. "You know my name. Say it." The man's eyes open wide. "Lilith." And then the demon screams. Victoria emerges from the cave, her hand wrapped in bandages. She reports to the people that the man inside will need medical attention, but they're free. Soon, she's found by John Blaze in a tea shop. He asks if she'll help them find Blade, and she corrects him. "You mean kill Blade." And no, John isn't sure that they need to do that yet. But Victoria is. If what she has seen has come to pass, and Blade has become that monster, then the Midnight Suns will kill him. I've been trying to blitz through these Blood Hunt issues, largely for production reasons, but I had to give this one a little more space to breathe. Author Brian Hill does a great job of writing a story that is dramatic, spooky, and just packed with action. He is the same guy who wrote Blade's last ongoing series, which ended just before Blood Hunt launched, so I figured that he might have some insight into whatever is going on with Blade in particular. And he certainly does. That opening scene with Blade staring at a burning church feels very much to me like Blade's mind is being trapped. He talks about being trapped in a nightmare, trapped in a dream. He's cold and he's burning at the same time. I think that this is showing us that Blade is trapped in his own mind. Because when he is talking to those soldiers that he trained, he never feels like Blade. His sentence structure is stilted and broken with these little pauses and repeated phrases. Now, Blade isn't a very friendly guy in the comics, but he is very theatrical. So when he does start talking, he gets a bit verbose, he's a little bit showy. Bless you, Go. This scene feels like someone is wearing Blade's body, but they haven't settled into it quite yet. And then we end that scene on Blade crying after doing the killing, as if some part of him hated this, but he couldn't stop it from happening. As I've pitched before, this isn't Blade. But can he still be saved is the question now. I do like that Tulip is the one gathering allies. As mentioned earlier, Tulip is a holdover character from Hill's last volume of Blade, so there is a connection there between the two characters. Plus, most of the Midnight Suns shown here are very much loners. None of these people really pick up the phone and ask for help when trouble comes a-calling, but Tulip lacks any supernatural powers of her own, so even if Blade isn't possessed by a vampire sorcerer that has existed since Atlantis was above water, then she is still drastically underpowered. She would never be able to take Blade down on her own. I am a bit sad that other cast members from Blade's series, like Rotha and her ghost dad, didn't show up yet, but the story isn't over. And if Varney is controlling Blade and eliminating his support systems so that the Blood Hunt invasion goes unimpeded, then maybe they have appeared and we just didn't get to see them die. Anyways, the Ghost Rider part of this story is incredibly frustrating for me because the continuity for them is just all wrong. In 2019's volume of Ghost Rider, Danny Ketch was possessed by the Spirit of Corruption, a totally different force than the Spirit of Vengeance. Visually, he got a new costume, he got a kick-ass bastard sword to swing around, and he glowed with green energy. This isn't an idea that got explored very much, as then-author Ed Brisson didn't get to wrap up his Ghost Rider storyline almost at all. He really only got things going, and then the pandemic just kind of killed the comic in its crib. In the most recent volume of Ghost Rider, written by Benjamin Percy, Danny was still possessed by a green-tinted Spirit of Corruption. So how and why he is back with an orange-flamed Spirit of Vengeance that works exactly the same as the spirit that possessed him back in the 90s, pretty much is just your standard issue Ghost Rider again, is a bit frustrating for me as a Ghost Rider fan. And that is especially strange since we are specifically told that Johnny Blaze does not have a Spirit of Vengeance in him at the moment. So that continuity we are tight on, while with Danny, no one cares. If you have read Ghost Rider Final Vengeance, I would also argue that that story has been happening so quickly that there's no real gap in the moments of it for this Blood Hunt related adventure to happen. So I would argue that all the Ghost Rider related stuff is kind of just smeared in continuity problems. Structurally, the stuff with Tulip interacting with them is meant to really give us basic introductions to who they are as people, some degree of their capabilities, and it works. I think that it's pretty subtle for a comic book, but I like it. I am pretty sure that them assaulting a vampire escort squad was just so that we could get an action sequence into this comic. Otherwise, it's all just people talking, and maybe it demonstrates the power and efficacy of this particular group. After all, these characters are planning to take on Blade. We need to know what they can do, especially since two of these characters, Danny Ketch and Victoria Montesi, haven't been appearing in comics much. I mean, Victoria hasn't shown up since it was Carnage's not last ongoing series, but the one before that. I think it's like it's in the 20 teens Carnage series. It was written by Jerry Conway. Beautiful covers drawn by Mike Perkins, if I remember right. It was actually a really good comic. So Author Hill needs to establish who Victoria Montesi currently is, what she can do, and how she operates within this kind of space. So we see her dispossess the demon, which is a skill that sounds particularly useful given Blade's current situation and my particular theory. But we also have the weird complication that she is using demons, and specifically Lilith, to do so. Lilith has a history with the Midnight Suns, as they first came together in order to battle her and her various weird children. If you're unfamiliar with the character, Lilith is the mother of all demons. She literally gives birth to demons, she's a skilled sorceress, and to some she's considered kind of a bit of a goddess. She is not a good guy by any stretch of the imagination, so I am really intrigued to learn how Victoria got her under her thumb and keeps her there. Secondly, artist Germaine Peralta draws her using the design that was used in 2019's Ghost Rider, the same series that saw Danny Ketch become the Spirit of Corruption. So artistically, we're paying attention to that story, but story-wise, we're ignoring it. Which, if you couldn't tell, I kinda hate. But more importantly, I think, this is Victoria using evil to fight evil. This is what Blade did when he drank Dracula's blood, and we can see where that got us. That possessed guy that Victoria deals with actually talks about the Adana, and how now the vampires are on the uprise, suggesting that the two events are connected. And not necessarily in a, like, the Adana happened and that is triggering something with the vampires, but in this idea that there's a darkness rising in the world. And this idea of using evil to fight evil even applies to the Ghost Rider brothers, because their spirits of vengeance and corruption are spirits of hell, depending on which particular retcon of Ghost Rider you're reading about this time. All of these characters use evil to fight evil, and now they're going to try and confront Blade, who appears to have been corrupted by his own form of evil. Can they save him? Or will they fall to the darkness themselves? Can Victoria even trust that Lilith won't betray her when she tries to use her magic? What if Blade offers Lilith a deal? Especially if Blade is possessed by Varney, who is a powerful sorcerer in his own right, who could potentially have had dealings with Lilith at some point. These are interesting complications with a lot of potential that I like a lot. I'm kind of disappointed and a little bit frustrated that Midnight Suns are only getting a 3-issue miniseries. I could read about this stuff all day. I am thrown by the timing of this issue. There is actually an editorial note at the beginning of the issue that says it takes place after the events of Blood Hunt issue 2, which we covered yesterday. But the opening scene of the comic feels like Varney is learning how to possess Blade. They are practicing when they kill those armored vampire hunters. And when Blaze visits Victoria in order to recruit her, she has had visions of what Blade will become. This suggests that he hasn't finished becoming the threat that he could become. This suggests that the Blood Hunt event is still building in the shadows, but hasn't started yet. Which, of course, conflicts with our publishing schedule and the editorial note that we're given. Unless I've totally just misread the opening scene and this ending scene, which is possible, but doesn't feel likely to me at this point. To me, this feels like Blade went through everything he went through in his ongoing series, right, and the book ended, and then he got weird. Killed his own crew, which is what we saw at the beginning of this story. This frightened Tulip, and now she's basically putting together a supernatural intervention. And to me, it feels like the Midnight Suns fail in their mission, freeing up a fully possessed Blade to then move into Blood Hunt proper. Unless I'm totally wrong. I also want to say that while I am glad that Tulip is putting together such a 90s-based group, I am sad that we don't have guys like Frank Drake and Hannibal King present. They were the other two Night Stalkers alongside Blade back in the day when that ongoing series was still ongoing. They have seen him at his worst and his most dangerous during the Midnight Massacre storyline, and King is a vampire himself. Why is he not getting used anywhere in this event? If I have to read about Baron Floopin' Blood, why can't I get to read about Hannibal King? We keep hearing these people be like, oh, you can't kill all the vampires, there's good vampires. Show me some good vampires! Where's Hannibal King? There's actually a second Lilith who is actually the daughter of Dracula. I don't think she's shown up since S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Howling Commandos, where like S.H.I.E.L.D. put together a supernatural response squad made of like vampires and magic beings and werewolves and Groot. Actually, once upon a time, because he's a monster. He was less of a sci-fi character and kind of just a fantasy character. But anyways, why hasn't she shown up? Why hasn't Drake shown up? Drake is the only person I know of in the Marvel Universe who has invented technology that can affect the supernatural. You would think that these two guys would make good allies in this fight. But they don't sell comics, do they? So they don't get to show up. And as a Midnight Sun purist, I am also sad that we don't get characters like Morbius, Sam Buchanan, or Jinx here. I know that Morbius is appearing over in Spider-Man's tie-in, but I don't want to buy that. And Buchanan and Jinx are definitely some of the least famous members of the Darkhold Redeemers who worked alongside Victoria Montesi in the Darkhold ongoing series, but still, they could matter. This could be the story that makes them matter to a modern audience. Everyone kept saying how important Jinx could be magically. Let's see it happen. I want the OG Midnight Suns back together. Stop giving me Wolverine and Magic and Nico Minoru and guys like Iron Fist or Moon Knight. I like those characters, don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to them existing. I'm not opposed to them even working on the team. But I want the OGs, you goddamn mother... Anyways, this issue goes a long way towards establishing that Blade is indeed possessed by a greater force. I suspect by Varde. And for all of my crying and complaining about how the details don't match up, I do really like this issue. This is probably one of my single favorite tie-ins so far, just in overall comic book quality. Right up there with Doctor Strange and then the Avengers have been great. The mood is perfect, the pacing is pretty solid, it looks really good. I think that artist Jermaine Peralta does a really good job lining up his interpretation of Blade with Elena Casagrande's, who drew that last volume of Blade's ongoing series. I do think that this is an incredibly solid read. I'm just clearly into these niche characters, so I'm a little bit biased. I want more of them, and I think Hill does a good job of utilizing their story elements, if not their continuity, at least their story elements, in telling this issue, that I just want more. And I know, if I remember correctly, at the end of Blade's ongoing series, there's specifically a little ad that's like, hey, Blade's story continues in Blood Hunt, and then there will be a Blade ongoing launched later this year. I'm assuming in October, which should be roughly when Blood Hunt wraps up, and then that takes us into the Halloween season. And if that is the case, hell yeah, I definitely want to get that. Hill's writing on Blade has sold me, and I want more of it. I want him to do a Blade in the Midnight Suns ongoing series. I want to see a cohesive, collected, magic supernatural team in the Marvel Universe again. And I just don't think we're gonna get it, but this book shows so much promise. In any case, thank you for staying with me on these Blood Hunt breakdowns. Our next episode will actually cover Blood Hunt issue 3, and then we've got a whole bunch more tie-ins coming. Let me know what you're picking up, what you're not picking up, what you're enjoying, and what your favorite twist of the series has been so far. I've been putting a lot of energy into doing these episodes over the regular show, but I'm having such a good time with it, I kind of don't care. So yeah, I'm excited for picking up a new issue of Blood Hunt this week, along with a bunch of tie-ins, and we're just going to keep moving forward. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.